Chag Sameach! Happy Hanukkah! Tonight is the first of an 8-day-long Jewish festival that commemorates an ancient rebellion. I live in the United States, where we give out presents on each night. At least half of the Pokemon merch I own were Hanukkah gifts. And this year, I want to spread the love by gifting some Pokemon to you. One of my favorite gimmicks within the Pokemon franchise is regional variants, where a Pokemon looks different and has an alternate typing depending on where they live. These regional variants are often influenced by the region they're based in's real-world cultural counterpart, such as how a lowland Marowak incorporates Polynesian fire dancing. This Hanukkah, I designed 8 new variants, one for each night, that put a Jewish spin on Pokemon we all know and love. Anyways, the first Pokemon I designed a variant for was Litwick, as candles play a role in almost every Jewish holiday I can think of. Due to Litwick's ghost typing, the first candle I thought of drawing inspiration from is what my community calls a Jahrzeitllicht, which we light on the anniversaries of loved ones' deaths. These candles are special because they burn for at least 24 hours, but they don't look all that different from Litwick's base design. Plus, most regional variants change the Pokemon's typing, and I can't imagine a Pokemon based on this tradition being anything other than a ghost fire type. So instead, I based my Litwick on Havdalah candles, which are double-wicked, usually braided, and lit on Saturday nights to signify the transition into the new week. I also considered having some of the dripping wax that works as Litwick's hair to resemble the side curls of ultra-Orthodox men, but that didn't make it into the final design. In the concept sketches I did off-screen, I tried outlining each of the individual braids that makes up Litwick's body, but that was too much detail in too small a space. Instead, I used Lily and Wooloo as references for how the Pokemon art style renders braids as just ridged outlines, which wax side curls would have obstructed. In Havdalah ceremonies, we don't wait for the candles to burn out on their own. We dunk them in grape juice or wine. So, I made Litwick's dripping wax purple to reflect the way the liquid often stains the wax. Figuring out the color palette for this line beyond the purple was a little challenging, and after creating the line art for all 3 of them, I kept jumping around to recolor things based on what I liked in another member of its line. Havdalah signifies the end of Judaism's weekly day of rest, so I gave Litwick a somewhat sleepy expression. I decided to incorporate the dual wicks of the Havdalah candle into Litwick's design as antennae. While the original Litwick's flame is fueled by draining people of their energy, I thought it would make more sense for the flames of a Havdalah Litwick, to reflect the general energy level of the space it's in. If you were practically falling asleep trying to study in the library, there would be little more than embers on the end of its wicks. But if the 2 of you were at a dance party, its whole head would be blazing. Keeping Litwick's original fire typing felt like a given, and my incorporation of energy levels into its lore felt like it warranted the psychic typing as well.
Litwick, the candle Pokemon. Litwick can sense one's suppressed emotions and seeks to soothe the distressed with its gentle glow.
For Lampent, I was originally going to base its design on a Ner Neshama, a continuously burning lamp that hangs in temples next to where holy texts are stored. Problem was, the design I created wasn't recognizably a Lampent. It looked more like an alternative evolution for Litwick, like how in Galar, Yamask evolves into Runerigus instead of Koffagrigus. If you're interested in seeing this first draft though, it'll be posted to my Patreon along with concept sketches for each of these designs. I based my second draft for Lampent on the traditional oil lamps that appear in Jewish communities throughout the world. These vessels are filled with olive oil and then have a wick sticking out the spout. Litwick evolves into Lampent at a very high level, 41. My explanation for why that would apply to this variant is that Diacynthian Litwick can only evolve if surrounded by overwhelming energy, such as the hype that would build surrounding a battle between highly leveled Pokemon. Once evolved, Lampent is now able to generate its own energy rather than simply reflect that of those nearby, and boy does it have a lot of it. Litwick's sleepy expression has now perked up into an eager grin. Unnovan Lampent's head is a flame encased in glass to match the design of the streetlights that it's based on, but these lamps burn openly, so I made the flame rise out of Lampent's head rather than burn within it. I shaped its arms to look like the oil lamps, which it would then use as flamethrowers to shoot its attacks from. At one point, I was going to have a wick sticking out of each spout in reference to its pre-evolution's antennae, but the design felt better off without them. Instead, I placed a braid around Lampent's torso as an homage to Litwick's braided body, and to add some detail to the area. I kept the fire psychic typing, as while these lamps were commonly made of clay, this Lampent doesn't really look like a rock type.
Lampent, the lamp Pokemon. Overflowing with energy, Lampent loves to spin around and draw patterns in the air with the fire from its spouts.
I'm sure many of you saw this coming, but I had to turn Chandelure into a menorah. Come on. Menorot are one of Judaism's most recognizable symbols, but candelabras with similar designs appear in other cultures as well. Menorot with 6 or 7 branches stand in synagogues all year round, but on Channukah we bring out a special 9-branched menorah called the Channukah. Each Channukah has one candle that's placed higher than all the others, a shamash, which I put on top of my Chandelure's head. The shamash is used to light all the other candles, the amount of which corresponds to which night of the holiday it is. So Chandelure's head flame is the only one that would always be burning, while the ones on its arms would be able to go out. I thought it would be cool to give Chandelure an ability based on how we light a new candle every night. I don't play Pokemon competitively, so forgive me if this is unbalanced, but it would be neat if Chandelure started each battle with only its head lit, and then, at the end of each turn, another arm lit up. Whenever this happens, this would result in an effect like Chandelure's special defense rising or some of its HP being restored. I mention those stats in particular to reference the Channukah legend of the menorah that had only enough oil to burn for 1 more day, but still managed to stay alight for 8. Thus, it would look like Chandelure only had enough health left to last it 1 more attack, but this ability would allow it to stretch things out a bit longer. I rarely include shading in the cartoons I draw, but for this series I wanted each piece to resemble the official Pokemon art style. This was most challenging with Chandelure, as it has a total of 9 different light sources. I referenced some photos of fully lit Channukah and tried to mimic the shading patterns I saw on them, but the way light was reflected on each depended on what material they were made of. Many Pokemon's lines have personalities that evolve with their appearances, and I tried to incorporate that here. While Litwick was dependent on the energy levels of those around it, and Lampent finally had its own energy but then couldn't regulate it, Chandelure has gained self-control and can now express original emotions without letting them take it over.
Chandelure, the luring Pokemon. Chandelure can drain the excess energy from overwhelmed people and Pokemon, which it then channels into dazzling fireworks.
Meowth was one of the first Pokemon to receive a regional variant, and until Generation 9, it had the most of any Pokemon. Because of this, it's almost a rite of passage for Fakemon artists to give it a variant of their own. I was inspired by the coin on Meowth's head, which appears in the same spot as where people wear tefillin. Tefillin, also known as phylacteries, are leather boxes and straps that contain scrolls of sacred text. It's tradition to wear tefillin wrapped around one's head and non-dominant arm during morning prayers. I replaced Meowth's coin with a tefillin box and gave it one on the back of its paw as well. I experimented with including the straps as part of its design, but ended up removing them as I thought they made things look too cluttered. I changed the number of whiskers on top of Meowth's head from 2 to 3, and put little bends in them so they resembled the Hebrew letter Shin, which appears on some tefillin. Each Meowth variant has a different typing, and I have to admit I was tempted to make this one psychic due to both psychic types and tefillin being associated with mindfulness. But come on, we just made 3 of those. And there is another Pokemon type that's associated with focusing their energy. Fighting types. It's said that we place tefillin on our heads and arms as a reminder that we should think with our head and act with our arm to achieve justice. And fighting types are often portrayed as heroes who protect Pokemon weaker than them. So, it feels like it fits.
Meowth, the Scratch Cat Pokemon. Meowth enjoys sparring with other Pokemon, and will lose on purpose to those weaker than it so that they can gain experience.
I skipped creating a variant for Meowth's evolution Persian, and instead wanted to tackle the Geodude line. I was invested in giving this one variants as its final stage, Golem's name comes directly from Jewish folklore. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we can redesign Golem, we have to start with Geodude. Geodude is one of my less favorite designs. It's literally just a grumpy-faced rock with arms. I think we can give this stone some polish. In many Jewish cultures, it's tradition to place a pebble atop any graves you visit. This made me want to create a rock ghost-type Geodude that would appear in cemeteries. Trainers will hold a battle just about anywhere, and someone has to make sure no one's grave gets caught in the crossfire. I imagine that just like the stones they're based on, these Geodude would perch atop graves where they could keep an eye out for anyone causing trouble. For the recently deceased who have turned into ghost Pokemon, Geodude would serve as a guide. I based Geodude's eyes on eye beads, a symbol that appears throughout the Mediterranean and Asia as protection against the evil eye, aka curses transmitted through nasty glares. I positioned Geodude's fingers so that they made the Koan symbol, which many Jewish graves are decorated with. Yes, it does look like the Vulcan sign from Star Trek. Leonard Nimoy was Jewish. But this came first, man. When blessing someone, we frame them between our hands in this position to direct the good vibes at them. And yes, anti-Semites love to make fun of how it can look like we're forming a triangle with our hands, thus signaling that Jews are members of the Illuminati and control the government. Man, I wish this symbol didn't have to come with so many disclaimers. That's about it for Diacynthian Geodude. Looks much friendlier now, no?
Geodude, the rock Pokemon. People often give Geodude offerings in exchange for its protection over their loved ones' graves.
After Geodude comes Graveler, and not gonna lie, I think it looks like a Latka. But I would not like to try taking a bite out of anything rock ghost type. Instead, I continued with the graveyard theme, imagining that Graveler could serve as manual laborers, digging graves, transporting tombstones, making sure everything stays tidy, and helping Geodude patrol the place. In one of my drafts, Graveler's body looked like a headstone, but I wanted to avoid the problem I'd had with Lampent where the silhouette was too different from the original design, so I vetoed that. I continued with the evil eye imagery, extending it beyond the Pokemon's eye beads to its hands as well, which now look like Hamsot. The symbol of a 5-fingered hand with a curled thumb and pinky finger appears in faiths throughout Southwest Asia, and in Judaism, we call this symbol a Hamsa, Hamsot being the plural. The evil eye is often depicted on the palms of Hamsot to ward off curses, and this type of jewelry is especially popular among Sephardic Jews. I wasn't looking forward to drawing all those fingers over and over again, so I did some copying and pasting. When Geodude evolves into Graveler, it gains not just a new pair of arms, but a set of legs. In one draft, my Graveler had only 4 arms and levitated instead of using its legs, but then again there was that issue of silhouette. I messed around with rendering its legs out of the same wispy material that links its hands to its body. I was inspired by how Mega Gengar is permanently attached to the ground. I thought this would be fitting for Graveler to have a constant point of connection between it and the land it protects. Graveler evolves into Golem by being traded, and I wanted to incorporate this further into the Pokemon's lore. In Judaism, when someone dies, they're supposed to be buried within 24 hours, meaning funerals are always last minute and you gotta gather everyone fast. So, in the Pokemon world, when someone dies away from their loved ones, delivering the remains or gathering guests from other towns before time runs out has become a coming-of-age task for Gravelers. If they succeed, they evolve into Golem.
Graveler, the rock Pokemon. When standing on the spot where someone is buried, Graveler can immediately locate the current location of their spirit.
Finally, we get to Golem. But guess what? I'm not gonna go with the obvious option. I'm not gonna make a Golem variant based on the Golem of Jewish folklore. I'm turning Golem into a Geniza. In Judaism, graveyards aren't just for bodies, they're also for books. Genizot are storage units that appear in Jewish synagogues and cemeteries to store damaged texts. Sometimes they remain in there forever, but other communities periodically hold burials for the content, which are treated with the same solemnity as a funeral one would hold for a human. Thus, Golem would serve as a living Geniza, and would travel around the community to collect people's damaged books. These books would be placed within its shell, where it would be able to compost them internally. As these texts get digested, Golem absorbs all the information within them so no knowledge is lost. I've always thought Golem looks a bit like a turtle, and while Judaism doesn't link turtles to wisdom the way many other cultures do, I still wanted to play off of that association by having it be able to recall each of the texts it's digested word for word. Perhaps it could even transcribe new copies of them. Golem would have another role linking it to the graveyard though, controlling unsettled spirits. If there was a ghost causing trouble, Golem would be able to suck them into its shell. This is inspired by how in some communities, not all of the texts stored in Genizot are physically damaged. Sometimes a text is stored in there simply because it encourages cruelty, and it's thought that the Geniza will be able to contain its malicious energy. The same internal force in Golem that digests the books helps to digest these spirits' anger. For most spirits, a stint in Golem's shell is just a quick time out. But for spirits that truly wish others harm and won't budge from this position, Golem will only ever release them during battle to attack enemies. You can see these spirits in the drawing peeking out from under Golem's lid.
Golem, the Megaton Pokémon. The eyes on its palms have a particular effect upon spirits, allowing Golem to compel any that meet its gaze directly.
Last but not least, I had to give a variant to my favorite Pokemon, Wooper. Wooper is based on a salamander, which many ancient cultures associated with fire. This is because salamanders really like hanging out on logs and among leaves, which are often used for kindling. This has resulted in many innocent amphibians accidentally getting tossed into the fire pit. When things started heating up, they'd come darting out, and for the people who hadn't realized there'd been a salamander in there in the first place, it looked as if they'd come into existence at the same time as the flames. Jewish texts have elaborated upon this myth, saying that salamanders can be created intentionally if you keep a glass-making furnace stoked for a week straight. I feel like this is begging for a glass-blown Wooper. Its typing would be fire ground, to reflect how glass is created by superheating sand. Wooper's ability to produce both fire and sand due to its typing would also make it capable of creating glass for its signature attack, where it shoots a glass projectile at the enemy that shatters upon contact, not only damaging the Pokemon, but becoming an entry hazard for any others its trainer sends out. I was picturing its body to be made of semi-transparent glass, so you could see the flames burning inside of it. This fire would then slip out through holes in the Wooper's head to create its gills. That said, I struggled to figure out how to render Wooper's body to look like glass, and the only Pokemon I had for references were Chandelure and Lampent, which we redesigned earlier. I was going to put Wooper's blazing core within its head, but that cluttered the upper half of its design, so I moved it down to Wooper's torso where markings appear on other Wooper variants. The specific kind of salamander Wooper is based on are typically depicted as pink, but they can come in all sorts of colors such as indigo and orange, the latter of which I found quite fitting for a fire type.
Wooper, the glassfish Pokémon. Wooper is known to enjoy taking naps in fireplaces, especially when lit.
And with that, we have 8 new Pokemon variants inspired by Jewish culture. I really enjoyed this challenge and will definitely repeat it next year, so be sure to subscribe. Maybe I could even get some guest artists in on it. If any of you end up creating Jewish-inspired Fakemon, please let me know as I'd love to see them. Happy Hanukkah to those of you who are celebrating. May these coming days bring all of you joy regardless of faith.